80% of the people, and we've tested this again and again, without any form of peer pressure, if you say to them, if I asked you to change your dietary habits for just 1 day a week to save the world, would you do it? 80% of people will say, yeah, no problem. And I think you can catch the other 20% with the Solomon Asch theory of people will do it because of the circumstance and peer pressure. We moved to British Columbia. We live on a property now where there are no restrictions on the number of dogs that we have. We have rescued a lot of dogs. This lot behind me, all but one there are rescues, and that is just a few of them. We've had a maximum of 47 dogs. I was accused afterwards because I made a little speech about the importance of the animals' sentience and how they had their right to their lives, and I had people criticizing me for preaching. And where we're actually known locally is the vegan cult. It's not popular running a sanctuary in what is essentially a farming community. This is a very, very rural part of British Columbia.
Welcome to the Better Life for Animals podcast, where we amplify the voices of animal advocates, sanctuaries, and changemakers working toward a kinder, more compassionate world. Through powerful stories and expert insights, we shine a light on the efforts to rescue, protect, and advocate for animals. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. Every follower helps us reach more people. And support animal sanctuaries. Enjoy the conversation.
Well, it is my pleasure today to welcome Mark Starmer to our show. Mark Starmer is a seasoned professional in adult development with over 40 years of experience as a human resource and organizational development consultant across 58 countries. Originally trained as a lawyer, he later held the senior global HR development role at HSBC before pursuing a passion for leadership and development. Mark authored the bestseller, Will the Real Leader Please Stand Up? And founded 2 international businesses. His work spans designing global learning initiatives, speaking at conferences, coaching, and advising governments. A vegetarian since 1990 and vegan since 2010, Mark is also deeply committed to animal rescue. He and his wife have created and cared for 89 dogs and currently have 32. In 2015, he founded the Peace of Heaven Project, a farm animal sanctuary home to over 150 animals. Motivated by growing scientific concerns about dietary change, Mark co-founded Plant-Based Future, an organization focused on urging corporations to go beyond shallow sustainability efforts. Mark, welcome to the podcast. What a rich bio you have.
Yes, and I'm only 27.
It seems as if every decade you've added a layer. I love it. I'm also in banking, and I too found my way to this cause starting with dogs. So I felt when I was reading your bio like you were a kindred spirit. And may I say that I love your website, Plant-Based Future. And your statement that people are aware, but they're just not acting on it because no one is asking them to. Yeah. I love that. It's like, yes, that's what we need. So I want to talk about sanctuary work, of course, but I was wondering if before that we could talk a bit about your knowledge of human behavior, because that must be what led you to call to the active engagement to the corporate world.
Yeah. Well, after a very long career in adult development, I kind of semi-retired to run the sanctuary. And then I guess it was just pre-COVID when scientists started to say, well, look, we really need to have this synergy of action to actually change what's happening to the planet. I think it was Johan Rockström who said we needed a symphony of politics, of business, of citizenry, and scientists. And the scientists were actually saying to us, well, we need to actually change our dietary habits. And it was broadcast everywhere. Everybody heard the message. It was big news, and nobody did anything. And I saw lots of commentary asking the question, well, why aren't people actually acting? And from my perspective, as really a career-long adult developer, it was obvious because people aren't actually being asked to do anything. And they're getting that they are the recipients of what's called passive learning, which means that you get pieces of information which comes to you, and it's then your choice whether or not you choose to do something about it, whether or not you consider it important enough to actually change and make a difference. But if you change that learning to what's called active learning, and you actually request of people that they do something with the knowledge that they've got, then they feel beholden to actually make a change, to make a difference. Now, this is something I'd experienced for years. And my principal role was actually in leadership development, actually getting people to grow as leaders other people want to follow. There's a big difference between saying you're a leader and people actually wanting to follow you. So how do you get people to actually follow you? Well, you do a certain specific number of things and then they will. But you're actually asking people, the type of person I was dealing with, they've been in management for 10, 20, 30 years. And why do they actually want to change? And it's the same thing with our dietary habits. Well, why would we want to to change the way we're actually eating when we've grown up and our parents have inculcated us with the ideology that says we need to eat animals because that's what we do? And so by using the same technique that I use to get people to change in the business world, I developed a methodology which would actually get people to change in their personal lives with their eating habits. And this was basically a very straightforward proposition, which said you run, it doesn't have to be any more than a 2-hour event within a business. And there is history within organizations of doing interventions of this kind, for instance, with what was used to be called just diversity as an issue, with bullying, with all sorts of societally related issues. We just translate it into the workplace and you must attend. And what do we expect to be different at the end of it? Well, in those cases, nothing. But in this case, we want you to make a very specific change, which is going to eat plant-based just 1 day a week. So it's not a revolutionary idea. It's not terribly sophisticated. But then I had a friend whose name is Becky Harcum, who is the joint founder of Plant-Based Future. And she said, well, how do you get people to actually commit? Because I get the psychology behind it, and that's been proved by a Polish-American psychologist called Solomon Asch, that if you get people together in a group and ask something of them, then they will do it because of peer pressure. So how do you get them to then sustain that change? How do you get them to keep doing that same thing? Well, why not get them to sign up to an app? So they're actually making a physical commitment, even though it's only signing up to an app and I'm going to commit to doing this thing 1 day a week. And by that methodology, you can get a groundswell within an organization. And the whole idea was to deliver this as an initiative to corporate entities rather than just broadly without in the public, and use the peer pressure from a corporate environment to get people to change internally. And then we have an embarrassment factor, which causes other organizations to promote the same idea. And within a very short space of time, you've actually got a massive incremental change. It's exponential. What many people don't realize about net zero initiatives is that they actually came about and received such popularity and force and drive out of embarrassment. So, for instance, there was a conference, I think back in, the 90s now. And the then chairman or CEO of Johnson & Johnson was having trouble because there was the talcum powder issue, if you can remember that problem, where their baby powder was found to be containing things that it shouldn't, and it was potentially quite toxic. And they wanted to do something which would revitalize their image with the public. So they announced that they were going to tackle the climate crisis, and they were going to do this by achieving net zero by a certain amount of time. And within a week of that conference, all of the other major chemical companies in America had net zero policies put in place. And it's the same embarrassment effect that can be harnessed to actually get people to change the dietary habits of the people who work within a company. Now, I've explained it in a very short period of time, and I apologize if I've gone on for too long, but that's the essence of the idea. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, but it will work. 80% of the people, and we've tested this again and again, without any form of peer pressure, if you say to them, if I asked you to change your dietary habits for just one day a week to save the world, would you do it? 80% of people will say, yeah, no problem. And I think you can catch the other 20% with the Solomon Asch theory of people will do it because of the circumstance and peer pressure. I'll shut up.
Not at all. That's amazing. Do you find that works in the United States, in the culture that we're living in at this moment? You can find companies that are willing to buy into this.
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. When I first came out with this as an idea, Dell EMC were very keen on the idea, and they just wanted me to have the app ready to go, and they would sign up. Now, different thing completely. And in the last few weeks, we've seen such a sea change, and the idea of DEI initiatives being thrown out of the window. It's not important, says the Orange Man. And forgive me if you're not in the same political sphere as I am. But with this kind of backlash against anything which is even speaking of or making people aware of climate change issues, I don't think there's a hope for it in America. In Europe, something else completely. Quite by a kind of opposite and counter effect, the head of sustainability for the Inca group, which is basically IKEA, a lady called Karen Flug, actually contacted me just a few weeks ago, and I've been trying to get IKEA to adopt this model for 2-3 years, and they wouldn't listen at all. They wouldn't even talk to me. And they turned around and said, okay, let's talk. And I think that's a big step, a big progression in the opposite direction. But America's going one way. The rest of Europe is doing something else completely. Canada, I don't know.
You're listening to Better Life for Animals podcast. Our mission is to amplify the voices of animal advocates, sanctuaries, and changemakers working toward a kinder, more compassionate world. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. First of all, go ahead and subscribe to this channel wherever you're watching or listening. And then get involved by visiting betterlifeforanimals.com. That's betterlifeforanimals.com. Be sure to check out our blog, learn more about incredible sanctuaries, and explore our book section, where 100% of net proceeds from book sales are donated to sanctuaries. Every action you take helps to make a difference. And remember, subscribe to this channel. And now, back to the show.
Well, we're at a moment in time, but it is a moment, and like so many things, this too shall pass. And we have so many forces, unfortunately, on our side, where I really think you have something, and I applaud you for this, using, asking the question, making the case, as opposed to so often where we're told to just, don't ruffle any feathers.
Yeah.
How many times do we hear that? So I just love that.
You wouldn't believe the opposition that I've faced. I mean, the first organization I went to was actually HSBC, because they were my former employer. My former employer. I trained the outgoing CEO, Sunil Quinn, 30 years ago, so I knew him quite well, and I contacted him, and he passed me on to their sustainability head, and she passed me on to the sustainability head in Canada, and she said, well, we're not going to do anything because we're working with the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership. So I wrote to them and I said, hey, look, you've got to ask these people who you're working with from HSBC to actually make a commitment. And their response was, well, we inspire people to make a change. We don't believe in asking them for anything. And I think that's a very sad indictment of, well, maybe society as a whole, that we are actually afraid to ask people to do what needs to happen.
Yeah, because we've seen that that doesn't work. Well, I'm just, we'll have to keep talking about this because it's the ticket. But let's talk about dogs.
Okay.
Something that we all love. There's not any, I don't think any political throw out from having a dog at this time. So what inspired you to start working with dogs, and how did that passion eventually lead you to the creation of the Pieces of Heaven Sanctuary?
Yeah, well, if you've noticed, I just changed my background.
I
If I move
did,
up,
I did. It's
there's
beautiful.
me with a few of our dogs. Yeah. Well, when I worked for HSBC, I was traveling all over the world constantly, and I left, ironically, to stop the traveling because I had a young family. Um, and I'd grown up in an environment where cats were, the thing, and dogs, no, dirty, filthy, smelly creatures. We don't have dogs. And I was at a hotel in Kuala Lumpur, and I actually bought my son, who was very small at the time, a stuffed toy of this made-up dog. And I thought, this has got to be some kind of fantasy dog. It can't be real. Went home, and just a few days later, my wife and I were at this garden show, and there was a woman walking a dog, and it was this stuffed toy. And I couldn't believe it. Well, it wasn't literally a stuffed toy, but it looked just like a stuffed toy. So I chased around after this woman, and I said, I've got to ask you, what kind of dog is that? And she said, it's a Shar Pei. And within 2 weeks, we had a Shar Pei. I've actually still got a Shar Pei. She's right here on the floor by me. She's the only dog in the room at the moment. Um, but yeah, she was the first dog we got. And after a few years, we met a breeder who said, look, I've just got this dog that's been surrendered to me. He's been chained up for 2 years in a kennel. Could you take him? And we said, yeah, sure, well, we'll take him. And interesting to have more than one dog. By the time we left the UK to live in Canada, which was in 2006, we had 6 dogs. We brought all the dogs to Canada with us, and we moved to a place just outside Calgary called Bragg Creek. And we had a 9-acre property, and we thought, great, no problem with the dogs. They can run around free, have a great time. Then somebody else left a husky outside our gate, just changed it up and went. So we took in this husky. And then we got known for taking in dogs, for allowing dogs to be on our property. And within a very short space of time, and I mean within about 18 months, we had 18 dogs. Uh, so then there was an incident where somebody complained about the dogs because they barked at some motorcyclists. The local municipal district authority changed the laws, and we were only allowed to have actually 4 dogs. So they said, well, you either get a kennel license or you move. We couldn't get a kennel license, so we moved. We moved to British Columbia. We live on a property now where there are no restrictions on the number of dogs that we have. We have rescued a lot of dogs. This lot behind me, all but one there are rescues, and that is just a few of them. We've had a maximum of 47 dogs living with us at any one time. We never move them on. They live with us until they pass. We've had dogs that have been critically ill when we've taken them. We've had dogs that have one leg, that are deaf, that are all sorts of problems with them. And we found that if you mix dogs that have been rescued with dogs that haven't been rescued, they tend to heal. It's quite a strange
Interesting.
reaction. Yeah. So if you look at the dog who's just to the left of my head, as well, the right of my head as you look at the picture,
Yes.
he was not rescued. He was actually from Germany, and we'd always wanted a Leonberger, and his name was Indiana Jones, and he was the pack leader. And the others, all of the others there actually are rescues. Yeah, they're all rescues. They all adjusted fine, and they all lived in harmony. We actually had a video of us releasing the dogs into their play area. That's their play gym, by the way. that they're standing on. We
Beautiful.
released them into the field that a friend had actually paid to have built for them, a 4-acre enclosure. And the video got last time I saw it, had 45 million views.
My goodness.
Because people love to see the dogs rushing out into the play area.
Yes.
So it was magical. So yeah, that's how we got into dog rescue. We are currently at 32 dogs, and we haven't stopped rescuing. The last one we took was actually from America just before Christmas, a Great Pyrenees, who I went down to fetch from Washington State. But I fetched them from as far away as Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is quite a long drive from here. And we've had dogs flown in from Taiwan, from other places in the Far East. We've actually got a long-haired dachshund who was, I think, where was she from? Korea. And she'd
Oh
been
my
used to
goodness.
feeding and got thrown out, and she came to us a couple of years ago. Yeah, they keep coming.
And it has extended beyond dogs, correct? You
Yes.
have all sorts of animals now. I'm wondering if that healing, working with a rescued animal versus someone who hasn't suffered like that, does that extend to other animals as well?
Hmm. That's a very interesting question. Um, we basically, both my wife and I, my Sharon and I are lifelong animal lovers. Sharon is actually from Goa, the Portuguese province of India, and her mother said to her, "Well, when you grow up, you can have as many animals as you want, but in the meantime, you can't have any." And so she grew up and she had as many animals as she wanted. Um, and we thought when we arrived here, well, we've got 95 acres now. We moved from 9 acres to 95 acres. Well, what do we do with all the space that we've got? And 4 acres is the dog's enclosure, and that keeps them happy. That's a lot of room to run around in and play. It's like a great big dog park. What do we do with the rest? Well, why don't we help out other animals? And we hummed and hawed about it, and we thought, yeah, we'd like to do this. Because by then we were very, very committed vegans. If you look at my arms, I'm covered in vegan tattoos. That one says vegan because I want to do more than just say I love animals.
Good
Um,
for you.
we wanted to help out more, and we actually got a connection with a lady who lived in Edmonton, which is 9 hours drive from here. And she said, "Look, my husband's passed. My alpaca herd has just been attacked by a pack of wild dogs. I've been offered $50 per alpaca for dog meat. I don't want them to go for dog meat, but I can't afford to give them away. Would you take them? Would you buy them?" And so we bought from her and drove up and fetched 7 alpacas, and paid the princely sum of $50 each. That was now 10 years ago. And that's how we started. By the end of that year, somebody had contacted us and said, "Hey, I've got this crazy horse that nobody wants, and that's going to be sold for horse meat. Will you take that?" And so we took that. And then there were the goats, and then there were sheep, and then and it just went on and on and on. And we've now got 12 different species here. We've got 2 stunning peacocks. Everybody hates peacocks if they live next door to them, so people are getting rid of peacocks all the time. Geese, cows. We sanctuaries start up with the best of intentions. People want to help, they want to make a difference, but it's a tough life running a sanctuary. And a lot of people start up and then realize that isn't what they want because they can't go on holiday anymore. And it's not just a 9 to 5 job, it's a 24-hour day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Yes.
So all the sanctuaries are closed and we've taken animals from them. We took 2 small cows from one sanctuary that we were told by the owner, "Oh, they're just this breed and that they won't grow that big, and we will give you $400 a month to actually keep feeding these cows."
Oh,
So they gave us $400 in the first month, and we never saw another penny afterwards.
oh,
And these 2 are the biggest cows you've ever seen in your life. They are giant.
sort of
Um,
like the pot-bellied pig that isn't, huh?
yeah. Oh, absolutely. We've had those. We've got 2 pot-bellied pigs that were actually found running around the streets of Calgary,
Oh
and
my
they
goodness.
featured on the local news channel. And the reporter was trying to persuade people, oh, going along to the Humane Society and adopt these pigs because they're really great and they can live in apartments and they don't eat much and they don't grow very big. And our
Hmm.
daughter was living in Calgary at the time, and she saw this and she knew what the issues were. And she rang up the Humane Society and said, "Look, you've got to let me take these pigs to my parents." And so got two Vietnamese pot-bellied pigs, which are big,
Yes, yes.
very big, really cute animals, but very big.
Do you find that public interaction, do you see people change when they interact with animals that they otherwise wouldn't know other than as food?
No,
No.
it's a sad question to answer because we find that a lot of the people who visit the sanctuary want to come for selfies.
Okay.
And they'll try and corner an animal, even though we ask them to be respectful. And they'll get the camera and they'll take a picture. And then we've actually heard people say, "Oh, well, let's go and get a burger on the way home,"
Um,
and they don't necessarily make the connection. Other people are profoundly moved by the experience that they have here, and they do change. They do decide, well, maybe there is a different level of sentience that I'd never realized was there before. And when they get that, it's like manna from heaven. But we had an open day here, gosh, must be 3, 4 years ago now. And we invited everybody locally, come along. It's free. If you want to make a donation, that's great. We put out signs on the roadway so people could find us because we're quite remote. By the time we actually started the open day, which was about 4 hours after I put the signs out, all of the signs have been taken down. I was accused afterwards because I made a little speech about the importance of the animals' sentience and how they had their right to their lives. And I had people criticizing me for preaching. And where we're actually known locally as the vegan cult. It's not popular running a sanctuary in what is essentially a farming community. This is a very, very rural part of British Columbia. And when we do encounter people locally who have animals, it's because they're getting rid of their animals and they want us to take them because they're bored with them, because they cost too much, because they don't want to winter them, all of these kind of things. So to be honest, we're quite cynical about the experience that we've had here. We exist because of a bunch of volunteers who do the most fantastic job of raising money for us. Believe it or not, the funding for our food, for feeding the animals, comes from an ongoing bottle drive. And we actually live in one of the communities that has the highest rate of alcohol consumption in the whole of Canada.
is that right?
Yeah. And so there's lots of bottles, there's lots of cans, and our volunteers collect them. We turn those in for money, and it keeps us going in terms of hay for the animals. But although we have 95 acres, we've only actually got a very small part of that fenced. It's overgrazed terribly. If you look on the website, you'll see that there's a map which shows the area that's actually occupied by the animals, and we want to fence another part of it completely. And we're we're constantly trying to raise money, but we're trying to raise money for that, and a big push this year to actually increase the amount of space that we can have for the animals to graze, to roam, to enjoy their lives in.
Well, I
And
love that on your website where you can sponsor a post. I
yes,
love it.
absolutely,
$25.
yeah.
Yes.
One individual post, and we're
Yes.
branding on it,
Yes.
and you'll be part of the sanctuary.
I think
Um,
that's genius. I just
well,
find it so interesting that you come from a world where you were trying to have a high level impact on the minds, and now you're in a rural area. And while your work is absolutely necessary and so laudable, you struggle. You're struggling with the people around you to see, you've got these beautiful dogs. I see them in the background, and why people can't go, well, I wouldn't do that to that dog, so I
yeah,
certainly wouldn't do that to that cow or
yeah,
that pig who's just as loving.
yeah,
I just know that the work you're doing is is going to lead to the answer that's going to make this all connect. And as I had said earlier, unfortunately, we also have all these other forces that are actually on our side because, get with us now or get with us later at all of our peril.
Yes.
So I think what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. It was an easy choice, but at the same time it was a hard choice because it's a life choice. Um, and I guess right back to the time that I was a child, I liked animals more than I liked people, which is odd because I spent the first 30 years of my life just working with people. A lot of the people who I work with can't understand why I made the choice that I did. They talk about me running a zoo. I'm connected to hundreds of people on LinkedIn who I've trained over the years. And frequently when I interact with them, we end up having arguments about the importance of every single life on the planet. And it's almost politically de rigueur at the moment that, well, some lives don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So we get the Orange Man and all of his cohorts giving out a message which is totally counter to what I very firmly believe, which is about peace, which is about acceptance, which is about tolerance. And if we don't get the message with animals, then we're sure as hell never going to get it with each other. That's my philosophy anyway.
Yes, I agree. I love the concept of takers and leavers.
Mm.
And we as a society are takers, and we just think it all belongs to us.
Yeah.
When in fact, every animal that's here is here not because they're here for us.
Yeah.
If you don't understand why they're here or what they're doing, that doesn't matter. That's not the point,
Yeah. Yeah. There was a wonderful posting that I came across years ago now on LinkedIn, and I wish I could find it. And it was written by somebody who was a scientist. And he explained why some minute form of microbacteria, a para something, was as important as a human being.
Mm.
And he went through all of the stages and explained the reasoning behind it. And we think we're all that matters, and we are so not all that matters. In fact, we're probably the most damaging, harmful thing here.
Right. Yes. When
Yeah.
people say, what's the meanest animal?
Yeah.
Human.
Yeah. 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 Oh, paramecium. Is that it?
No.
That sound right? It's paramecium? Well, never mind. Something scientific that I don't fully understand. And I didn't know what it was, but it was coming down the scale of life forms.
That's
Yeah.
right. Well, have there been any unexpected lessons or benefits that have come as a result that you didn't expect from having a sanctuary? I mean, we all have to have hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my first lesson, and it's one that we get constantly, is just how sentient other creatures are. And you can look at them in one way and think, well, they are lesser beings, and they don't do the same things that we do, and they don't drive cars, and they don't build cities, and they don't order takeaways. But the emotional reality of their experience, their interaction with each other, their family orientations, their raw emotions, their experience of life is so, so real. And it's been a privilege as much as anything else to actually interact with them on a day-to-day basis in as close proximity as we do. We have these two peacocks that I mentioned earlier on that actually sit out the front of the house, and one is white and she's Sita, and the other one who's your traditional blue peacock, we call him Gary. That's kind of embarrassing, but we couldn't think of a name for him, and I called him Gary, and he turned and he looked at us. And these two peacocks will come if you call them. And they come up to the house every morning because they want to be fed. And if you don't feed them, they start squawking. But to actually go out there with these gorgeous, gorgeous creatures and actually be close enough to touch them, we don't try and touch them because they'll touch us if they want to. Just that experience is just fantastic. Broadly speaking, though, the learning that's come from what I would like to apply in everything else that I do is that I don't think any of us should write ourselves off in terms of our ability to make a difference. And I come across a lot of people who are vegan who say, well, yeah, I can't do anything. I can change myself, and that's all I can do. And I don't believe in that philosophy. I believe that if we have enough collective action, we can make a change to the world around us. I believe that if we have enough positive thinking, we can make a difference. I believe if we keep pursuing a cause, then we'll overcome whatever blockages and obstacles are in the way. And as you say, with, say, the Orange Man, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. And we'll still be left with trying to put back together a world that is probably by then in even bigger trouble than it is now. But if we, at any point, lose sight of the impact that we could and should make, we're making a grave mistake. And we can all do a lot more than we think. We can influence in the simplest ways, even if that's only members of our family. It's impossible to know me and not be vegan because I just bully people until they go vegan. I wish that were a joke, but it's not.
Well, that's
But
interesting because so often we're told, leave your family alone, leave your friends alone. You need that support system. But what I'm hearing, and I agree with you, that's hard to do. It's like, how can you? How can you live with these animals and
yeah,
and serve them on your plate or wear them on your feet?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I'm an extremist, and I admit that. And I think it's come from the fact that we live with these animals on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we've got a kid, a goat kid, living in our bathroom because it was rejected by its mother. That's another long story why we even had a kid in the first place. Um, but when you are with them on a day-to-day basis and you're that close and there's that physical proximity, you can't stop. You need to always try and to be making a difference. And it's easy to believe that you're doing your bit because you're not eating meat, but well, do more. Do more. Always
That's
look to
just the
do more.
start.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And
I
as with the thing with the family, yeah, my daughter wasn't that keen on going vegan to begin with, but eventually did to her credit and is now as vegan tattooed as I am. My father, who is 91, thinks he's a vegan, tries very, very hard to be a vegan, but gets confused about what food stuff you can eat and what can't. Um, I think my last count, I just topped 100 people that I influenced to go vegan, and that's the most important thing I've done in my life. It's much more important than the thousands of people that I've trained. It's more important than the governments I've advised on how to promote leadership in this organization or that department or even that person. It's so much more important because I don't think of it in terms of a legacy, but I would like to think that I've done something important with my life when it's over. And although I'm only 27 and I got a long way to go, um, then it is important to have tried to do something to make the world a better place. And I think everybody should be trying rather than trying to bring us down.
I
I
couldn't agree more.
yeah, I mean, I looked at the news today and the horror of the things that are happening and this abandonment of the free world and leadership of the free world by the US and the promotion of things which pit us against one another rather than allow us to see our commonality. It's tragic. But then I
It
go back
is.
to the animals. Until we get it right with animals, we're not going to get it right with humans and other people. Sorry,
Well, we're not
not
going to give
totally
up. We're
cynical.
not going to give up.
No, absolutely
No.
not.
Well, I love what you're doing. I appreciate that you're an advocate. We need more people like you. And I want to help you any way that I can. And I want our listeners to check you out. Is there anything that you would like us to do as a call to action that could help you and yours specifically?
Specifically, if anybody would like their name branded on a face post,
Absolutely. I love that idea.
um, then if you visit our website, which is pohpsanctuary.com, I'm sure it'll explain everything to you when you go into it. I don't actually manage that side of the sanctuary. We have people all over the world who actually help to actually run the social media side of what we do, which is fantastic, because we don't have time to do that here. But if you want to go into the POHP Sanctuary site, you'll see how you can help by sponsoring a fence post. I think it's pretty cheap.
$25 a post.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
cheap.
that's
Totally worth it.
That's huge for us.
Okay.
It really is huge. And if people could do that, then that would be fabulous. If you want to learn about what we're trying to do with Plant-Based Future, that's plant-based-future.com. And if you actually looked up vegan HR consultant, I'm still consulting to companies in the vegan area to try and help them be more effective in their people management, their leadership practices. So yeah, you can look me up on markstarmer.com and you'll find me.
Excellent. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on my show here.
Well, it's my pleasure, Cheryl. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm sorry I speak nonstop.
No, I think you have so much to say, and everything you say makes so much sense, and we just need more of you in this world. And we're all a little in shock right now over what's going on politically, but we have to know that tomorrow's another day and we will carry on.
Yeah, very well.
All of your managerial skills and these policies that you put into place will have their day in the United States.
Thank you, Cheryl. I really hope so.
Yes.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Better Life for Animals podcast. Together, we can create a world where all beings are treated with dignity, respect, and care. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. It helps us reach more people and spread awareness about the incredible work happening in animal sanctuaries. You can also share this episode with friends and fellow advocates to keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep speaking up, taking action, and making a difference for the animals.